So we are back for the third episode on Get Moving with MJ. And we have a special guest with us today. She is not only my friend, but also client, 9-to-5 corporate professional and investor, Georgia Peach, now DC Diva, Miss Bethel Stevens.
Hi.
Start with Bethel letting you introduce yourself to our viewers. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in DC, and then we'll kind of dive into a little bit about your journey.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Sure.
My name is Bethel Stevens. I moved to DC 12 years ago for an internship, and I'm still here.
We're glad to have you.
And just over 2 years ago, I got into real estate, so I'm now a real estate investor, but I'm also have my day job, so I have my 9-to-5, and I've been doing this real estate thing on top of that. So
Awesome. And you were originally a Georgia Peach, right?
yes, I'm from Atlanta.
All right, Southern Bells Connect. I know you all know that I'm originally from Kentucky and relocated to DC as well, so I love a good transition story from state to state. All right, so Bethel, we're going to dive in a little bit. So talk to us about, I know you just got into the game a couple of years ago, but talk to us about your first investment property, and then, kind of bring us up to today where you just recently closed on a 4-unit property in DC.
Yeah, so my first property I purchased in 2021, and it was a typical BRRRR strategy. I saw something that needed a lot of work, an opportunity to add value to it. So it was in Atlanta. I bought a 3-bedroom townhome in Atlanta, put some work into it. Actually ended up living in it for a couple of years, or just over a year, and then rented it out.
Awesome.
But in the course of that, I learned a lot in terms of what it took to renovate and, managing contractors, but also even, during that time when I got the property reappraised, the value that just came out of nowhere, right? So I was literally thinking, wow, this really does work, and I could just repeat this back in DC, and I just got the momentum and the excitement to keep doing it.
2021 was a big real estate year in most any market. Tons of equity in all properties. I know that I purchased my first property in DC in 2020, and by 2021 I had over $100,000 worth of equity. So feel you on that. So let's dive in now to this most recent property that I had the pleasure of representing you on the deal. Your first big multifamily in DC. For those of you who are unaware, 4 units in DC on average are usually around $1 million plus. We were unfortunately able to get a property that needed a little bit of work, and Bethel was able to move in with some equity. So we're going to hear more about that here shortly. So let's dive in on just the art of the deal, right? And what was the process to finding the property, getting it under contract, and we'll dive in more.
Sure. I don't know where to start, but let's just say that I had been looking for over a year at this point. And at this stage, first thing I did in the morning was look at the properties, right? And so it was right after New Year's. It kind of was slow, right? But I still kept looking every morning. It was kind of a habit at this point, and I saw the property. I sent it to you.
So I've been sending her properties daily, so she kind of can take a peek what's out there on the market. Anything jumps out, I'm like, hit me. Go ahead.
I saw it. I knew it was priced to sell. I knew, compared to the market, it could potentially be a good deal. Sent it to you, and I think you're like, let's go tomorrow.
Right, yes.
So
speed to the property. But go ahead. Yes.
So what do you want to talk about next?
So we went soft next day, right? First thing in the morning,
I got it.
Yeah.
All right. So we went to see it the very next day, and I remember it was a rainy day, and I was in back of my head. I'm like, maybe we need to go the day after. But then I also thought there would probably be less people going out to see it, right?
Yes,
so,
that is true.
And it was on the market for less than 24 hours. But we went and saw it. I'm not gonna lie, girl. It looked a little bit scary. Okay,
Yeah, it's a little shaky. Definitely a little shaky.
But I still knew it was potentially a good deal, and I told you, just let's put an offer on it, right?
Yeah, yes, and it's something to be said for when you feel something in your spirit, you have to trust your gut and just go for it, right? We were at that property, I think, at 9 a.m. and we're like, okay, let's do the thing. And you're exactly right. Like, you're an investor who knows your numbers, you know your market, and it's just my job to just kind of guide you in the process. And
and I will say, at that point in time, I had gotten so many reps, right? When I see a property, I send it to you. As my agent, I send it to my lender. I'm getting, detailed numbers really early on in the process, so I could, quickly see, okay, what is going to be the payments on this? What are the expected rents, right, for this neighborhood? So going in, I already have a good idea whether or not this is worth our time, because we've seen so many of these, right? And you've seen a lot of
these. Oh yeah, you're not my only client. So yes, we have definitely made my rounds around the district, especially as it relates to 4 units. So with that said, we get in the property, we check it out, right? You got an idea numbers-wise what we're looking at, and then next we then have to start thinking about what would some potential renovations cost, and we start putting together, as I call it, right, the starting 5, right, of real estate. And that's, obviously, having a solid agent, having a solid lender, contractor, inspector, and of course title company, right, to get us across the finish line. So talk to us about how you put together your starting 5.
I did a lot of networking. I met you at a networking event. I'm really glad I did. So it was just, I was so hungry for information, and I knew I needed to get around people with that expertise. And so, a lot of networking. That's how I met you, and actually you put me in touch with the contractor, the inspector, and then the lender I'd also met in a prior transaction. So the team was already ready to go.
Team was ready to play ball. So so we of course brought them in and let them just put their expertise on display, and we got under contract relatively quickly, and then all the fun started. So, all right, so now we are under contract. Shit got real, right? Really quick, right?
I was scared. Okay, can I be real? The day you submitted the offer, and mind you, I'd done single families before, so this was, multi, and I knew I wanted it. But I was scared at the level of work that this needed, and I doubted myself, and I don't think I slept very well that night as we were waiting to hear back from them, but they accepted, and we were under contract. And at that point, it was like, well, we're not going back now. We're under contract, and we're going to figure it out.
Yes. So true. So, let's dive in a little bit deeper on that for any new or aspiring investors, and even seasoned investors that still may get a little bit of cold feet when they're, going under contract on a property and trying to really think through how they're going to bring it together. Let's talk about that. I don't know that we talk about that enough, just the level of fear sometimes that overtakes us, imposter syndrome, if you will. And especially, being, us young Black women navigating this industry alone, right? We're unmarried, no kids, nobody like writing checks for us,
Yeah.
no sponsors, no sugar daddies, right? Like we're out here going and getting our own money, right? And then going out here and trying to make these deals happen, right? And frankly, it is scary, right? And so talk about like what ultimately helped you to just stay the course.
I think a couple of things. One is when the facts trump emotion, right? It creates
Jim.
It anchors you. It's not that, the fear, the imposter syndrome, that the emotions were there. Believe me, they were there. But the foundation of this is what, I've researched to death. This is what I know is going to get me to where I need to be. This is what's going to build wealth. This is, I've checked the numbers, right? So that kept me focused. And if I was just relying on the fear and the emotion, then absolutely I would be, swaying every which way. But at that point, again, the foundation was already cemented in my mind, and I was able to push through it. And I will also say some of that only subsided when things got a little bit more clear. What do I mean by that? So we knew the property needed a lot of work.
Right.
In my mind, it could be, I had no idea what it could be, right?
Right, that's right.
But, as soon as we got under contract, again, speed, right? The next day we had the contractor and the inspector at the same time. So within 24 hours we were there. I had a good, or at least a best estimate at that point of how much it was going to cost, right? So it wasn't just me in my mind trying to, without real figures or real assessment of what needed to be done and how bad it was, coming up with something astronomical or that could potentially be way off. So with more information we received, the more comfortable I got, because then you're like, okay, if X needed to be fixed, we need to do Y, and that could cost this much and takes this much time. So with more information, right, then it was, then you kind of have a solution. You already know the problem, then you start finding solutions, and then you could kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And then I can kind of dive in terms of like supporting you. If I know what the numbers are also, I'm like, okay, now we can dive in on the art of negotiation, right? So then I can go back to the sellers. I now can see the list of all the repairs that are needed. We have a number. So then it's like, in my mind, I look at it like, okay, how can I support my client? Then go to the sellers and then try to negotiate as much seller assistance as possible that helps to offset the money you're already going to fork out. And so, we'll use real numbers here, right? Like we went under contract, $839,000. We got our inspector, our inspector came in, assessed everything. We knew what that looked like. That was thoroughly done. Shout out to DHS Home Solutions. Then we brought in Visions of Color Home Improvement to assess the renovation costs. That got us to negotiate on the seller side $17,000 off the price, and it was already priced to sell, and she's moving in with equity, so that's even more amazing. So now she has a very small margin that she's having to come out of pocket for a renovation. Thorough inspection done. Shout out to DHS Home Solutions for their stellar work, climbing on the roofs, in the crawl spaces, every nook and cranny of the property. Inspections are underrated, but they are absolutely vital to understanding the health of the property that you're getting. And or if it's a bad deal, right, you need to back out. So also, good agent will negotiate your contingencies to make sure you don't get stuck in a bad deal. But with that said, then we brought in the contractor, got some solid numbers there. Once I was able to receive those numbers, then I was able to, target the art of negotiation on the seller side and get my client's price down. So with that said, I was able to negotiate a $17,000 price reduction in credits that ultimately led to her having a very minimal amount she's now going to have to come to the table with to renovate the entire property. So we're very excited about that. Made for a fun closing day.
there's
Yes.
instant equity because
Yes, absolutely.
the home appraised over
Overvalue.
Yeah.
Right? So that was amazing. And then on top of that, once the work is done,
Yeah.
the house can then at any point be reappraised and be worth even more. So that's all the good. Now let's talk a little bit about the bad and the ugly, because no transaction, or I'll say rarely, transactions are without its challenges. Yeah, so we get to the closing table, everything's smooth, everything's great. Yeah, right. So, as anybody knows, right, rarely are real estate transactions smooth from beginning to end. It does happen, rarely, but in this case, we did experience some challenges along the way, right? We talked a little bit about the good, but now we're going to go a little bit into the good and the bad. I'm going to take a little sip on this note, because there were some very stressful moments. Bethel, will let you dive on in.
Oh man. Well, there was definitely a point where I thought the seller was going to pull out and I was going to lose this transaction. It got, how would I describe it? I mean, we were just not, we were very far off at one point in the negotiations. But thanks to you, we, they came around and ultimately, we agreed on what we agreed on. So
yes, yeah.
But there were definitely moments where I thought this whole thing was going to fall apart for sure.
Yeah, definitely my previous sales skills came into play of just being firm and just shutting up, and then putting the sellers in a position where we just had to draw a line in the sand. It's like, take it or leave it. And we ultimately got to the closing table.
And I will say at this point, in the last 12 months leading up to this, I had lost 3 or 4 transactions. And I had kind of decided that I wasn't going to do something that ultimately wasn't going to make good business sense, right? So I had my minimum. This is what works for me, and not to get too emotional, or emotionally attached to that investment, because it is an investment. And the minute you get too emotional about it and you start compromising on what your minimum requirement is, then it's not going to be a good thing. So luckily they met me at what my minimum was, but I was fully prepared to walk away, because I've had to do that before, right?
Yeah.
But that part really, really does suck, and I was definitely, hoping that we wouldn't lose this one, and we didn't, which was good.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a second, because how many times do you take L's in this game, right? Like, and I think that's the part that oftentimes people don't realize. Like, as investors, you often take L's in silence, right? And you got to take them on the chin, right? Bounce back and stay in the game, and it really forces you to get thick skin in this. But for those aspiring investors that are currently sitting and they're watching this, and they got all these thoughts swirling through their brains, they have analysis paralysis, right? Let this be like an example of, right, doing it scared, right? Doing it with a million questions, doing it but being firm and solid in, right, your inner knowing, but inner knowing, whether that's spiritual, however you want to look at that, but also the inner knowing of the work you've done, your experience, your numbers, right? And taking all of that and allowing yourself to just keep going forward and trusting, and I tell all my clients, you cannot get emotional about these transactions. If it's meant to be, if it's meant to be, it's going to be in anything in life. And, I trusted that process all the way through. I'm like, you know what? It was some shaky moments, but it's like, you know what? If this is your property, it's your property. And if it's not, guess what? We'll find another one, right?
Yeah.
And so, so we definitely did that.
And I will say, I wish more people would talk about their failures, because you kind of go in thinking that, oh, it's going to be a slam dunk, right? Oh, it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
But because I've had the L's, I was kind of prepared either way, but really nothing can prepare you for that. And I wish more people would talk about when it just didn't work out and when it failed and they took L's. And what was important for me and what I encourage everybody to think about is, do you have the conviction, right?
Yeah.
The real conviction that you know that you believe in what you're doing, because when it gets hard, you might look around and say, well, it worked out for everybody else except me, when in fact, a lot of people go through this. They get to, a lot of L's, or at least, it's not a slam dunk every time, right? So just having at least that understanding would help you navigate and be more resilient when you're going through the ups and downs of real estate.
Resiliency is the word, right, that you have to carry with you through this entire process. So now let's talk about, you've closed, right? Renovation will be taking place soon. So what's next for you on your journey, right? Like once, you get this property cash flowing and all of that, what's your next goals, right? You're now, at 5 doors, which is an amazing accomplishment in such a short time being an investor. So let that be some inspiration as well. What do you think you want to do next, right?
Definitely more doors.
Definitely more doors.
Together.
Yeah.
No, I'm fired up. I think, again, the lessons along the way have helped me be more focused on what things I don't want to try again.
Right.
And then what things, or what markets to focus on, for example, what types of properties. So I'm hoping to do a lot more.
All right. I'm here to support you along the way.
Yeah.
Super excited. So tell us, Bethel, what advice would you give an aspiring new investor, whether they, currently reside here and looking to dive into the game? Let's say they're relocating to the area and looking to dive in, or potentially they're in another state and just looking to make some lucrative investment opportunities in DC, or the DC metro area as a whole, which could be inclusive of Virginia or Maryland. What would you advise them, having moved to the area yourself?
If you're new to real estate, I definitely say build that foundation that's going to carry you. Once you are fully cognizant and have full buy-in of what you're doing and why you're doing it, I think that's going to keep you focused and engaged and consistent over the long term. If you're wanting to invest in DC, call up MJ.
I get you.
You need her on your team. You put me in touch with a lot of the other folks, the contractor, etc. And so I think having a really good agent who knows how to work with investors. I know you're my friend, girl, but I called you a lot, right? And especially newer investors, you're gonna want somebody who's patient enough and who has the capacity or the team to be able to answer a lot of those questions and
phone's always on
and be a resource. So that's certainly really, really important.
And when you were talking about the foundation aspect, what were some of the resources, knowledge, information, where did you retrieve that information from, especially when you were first getting started? Were you listening to podcasts, reading books? What were some of the places or trusted sources of information that you relied upon?
Shout out to Bigger Pockets. That's definitely the best resource as far as the amount of content there is out there, especially for new investors. That was very helpful. They have also a lot of events. And so whether I was here in DMV or in Atlanta, I would always go to the Bigger Pockets events and connect with other investors. And I can't tell you how much that network has been so important. and again, you know, I met you, not through Bigger Pockets, but in that networking
Working space,
space, so that you kind of have to be a little bit obsessed, know what you want, and then like go after it 100%. There's a lot of time investment. There's a lot of capital investment. This is not something that I recommend anybody do half-ass. Right? If you're in, go in. Right? I went to a lot of networking events. I didn't know a soul, but I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that I was probably the person who knew the least in the room, but that meant I should really be in that room. Right?
For sure.
I needed to be in that room. So I would get people's, you know, information. And, you know, once or twice somebody would comment like, oh, you're the first person to reach out, right? Like I would be blowing up people's emails, their socials, their phone. I was that person because I wanted it that badly. But you just have to, you know, do the work.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And so, so foundation is key. What else would you advise or recommend for any aspiring new investor?
Yeah, I mean, just to recap, you know your why, get the information, the actual knowledge you need to be successful, get a really good
team together. Get your point guard.
Get you an MJ. That makes all the difference. And then I think community along the way is also important. I try to surround myself, you know, people who do real estate, but for me specifically, I'm inspired when I'm around other Black women, all of us single, figuring out on our own, right? And we're really able to encourage each other along this journey. And I always say, there's different tiers, right? Sometimes the people who are uber successful, yes, there's so much to glean from that, but they might be so far removed that they don't remember what it was like in the first couple of years, right? So being around people in their, you know, year 1 through 5 is also really important because it's not that long ago. They remember some of the things that really helped them, right?
Absolutely.
You're able to get so much more practical, tangible, very next day, next step type of information from that kind of group. So I try to always surround myself with people like that.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so Bethel, as we bring this interview to a close, are there any, you know, mantras or just strong one-liners that you use to sort of guide your everyday life that you would like to leave with our viewers as parting words?
Yeah, so my favorite book is The Magic of Dreaming Big by David Schwartz. And so my parting words is dream big and believe you can do it.
Parting words indeed.
Black Girl Magic.
Cheers.
Cheers to more doors.
To more doors, more life, more everything. And this is MJ signing off and Get Moving with MJ.